Have you ever walked out of the pharmacy with a receipt that looked like a novel, feeling like you just dropped half your paycheck? If that sounds familiar, this video is exactly what you need. Today we're going to talk about how to stop that vicious cycle. I'm going to reveal the cheap alternatives to expensive prescription drugs, the ones your pharmacist strangely seems to forget to mention. Get ready, because in the next few minutes, we're going to expose the biggest secret of the pharmaceutical market. We're going to unlock a strategy that could save you thousands of dollars, all without sacrificing the one thing that truly matters: your health. This is the information the big pharmacy chains definitely don't want you to know. By the way, right now, drop a comment below and tell me, what's the most expensive medication you've ever had to buy? I guarantee, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how you could have saved that money. Before diving into the specific examples, let's quickly cover the basics. Why is it that some pills cost the price of a fancy dinner, while others, with the identical effect, cost less than a cup of coffee? It all comes down to two simple concepts: the original drug and the generic. Imagine a major pharmaceutical company spends 10 years and billions of dollars developing a brand new medication. They invented it, tested it thoroughly, and proved its effectiveness and safety. To recoup those massive expenses, that company gets a patent. This patent grants them an exclusive right, meaning they're the only ones allowed to sell that drug for many years. Naturally, they set the price as high as possible, but eventually that patent expires, usually after about 20 years. And that's when other manufacturers step onto the scene. They take the exact same chemical formula, the one that is already known and proven, and start producing their own versions of the medicine. These are called generics. Since they don't have to spend billions on development and research, their product costs a fraction of the price, sometimes 10 times cheaper. The key takeaway here is this: the active ingredient in both is absolutely identical. So let's dig a little deeper. What exactly is this active ingredient? Imagine a classic Napoleon cake. Different bakeries might prepare it their own way. One might use extra cream, another might make the layers crispier. The packaging will differ, and it might be branded as the Emperor or French Caprice. But the core foundation, the puff pastry and the custard cream, that remains unchanged. In the world of medicine, the active ingredient is that exact foundation, the main element that actually provides the therapeutic effect. Everything else is merely an inactive component or excipient: starch, talc, or dyes. These help form the pill, but they don't treat your illness. The name you see in large print on the packaging is the trade name. Think of it as the cake's brand name. But right below that, usually in smaller font, you'll find the international non-proprietary name, or IN. That is the name of the active ingredient, and this name is your key to massive savings. Remember this: it's not the brand, the fancy box, or the TV commercial that treats you. It is the chemical formula, the active ingredient, that cures the illness. And that chemical formula is absolutely identical whether you buy the expensive original drug or its affordable generic counterpart. Let's dive into the core conflict: brand name drugs versus generics. It's a real battle of the brands, and unfortunately, our wallets often end up being the losers. As we've already established, the original or brand name drug is the pioneer. Its creators poured massive amounts of money into research, clinical trials, advertising, and promoting it to doctors. All these enormous costs are factored into the final price of every single pill. Once the patent protection expires, generic manufacturers step in and enter the market. Their mission is much simpler. They just need to prove that their pill works exactly the same way as the original. To do this, they conduct specialized bioequivalence studies. Simply put, they verify that the drug reaches the bloodstream at the same speed and volume, delivering the exact same therapeutic effect. Government regulatory bodies strictly oversee this entire process. No generic drug will ever make it onto pharmacy shelves unless it proves its complete therapeutic identity to the original product. So, when you buy a generic, you are paying only for the medicine itself, not for the marketing, not for the sales reps visiting doctors, and certainly not for 20 years of scientific research. You are paying for the result, not the brand history. Let's bust the most popular and, frankly, the most damaging myth out there. If it's cheaper, it must be inferior. This stereotype is deeply ingrained in our minds, and pharmaceutical giants are only too happy to capitalize on it. A lot of people believe that if a generic drug costs 10 times less, it must be manufactured in some back-alley basement using chalk and mystery powders. That is simply not true. Drug manufacturing is one of the most rigorously regulated industries globally. The facilities that produce generics go through the exact same inspections and must comply with the identical quality standards as the big-name brand manufacturers. The GMP standard, good manufacturing practice, is universal. It applies to everyone. As for the raw material, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, or API, it is often produced by just a handful of specialized factories worldwide. These factories supply the substance for both the expensive brand names and the generic manufacturers. The difference in price, I repeat, is solely due to the absence of massive development and marketing costs. Think of it this way. You are buying a smartphone. You have a highly promoted, recognizable brand that costs $1,000, and then you have a lesser-known brand with the exact same specifications for $300. You don't assume the second phone is made out of cardboard, do you? You realize you are simply not paying the premium for the logo. It is the exact same story with medication. But there's another category of substitute you need to be aware of: therapeutic analogs. The situation here is a little more complex. While a generic is an exact replica containing the identical active ingredient, a therapeutic analog uses a different active ingredient, yet belongs to the same pharmacological class and shares a similar mechanism of action. For example, there are several different substances used to lower blood pressure, and they all belong to the same group, such as ACE inhibitors. Chemically, they are distinct, but they treat the same condition. In some cases, substituting one for another is possible, and even warranted. For instance, if a patient experiences side effects from a specific compound. However, there is a crucial caveat here. This type of substitution can only be recommended by a doctor. Never, do you hear me? Never switch to a therapeutic analog on your own, just because it's cheaper. Different substances can have different side effect profiles, contraindications, and specific interactions with other medications. So, let's remember the rule. Feel free to choose a generic with the identical active ingredient. However, any discussion about switching to a therapeutic analog must be handled by your primary care physician. So let's move on to the practical side. How exactly do you become a financially savvy patient? Step number 1, the most crucial one. Learn how to read the label. Your goal is to find the International Non-Proprietary Name, or INN. This is usually written right underneath the big, bright trade name. For example, you might see Super Healer Forte written in large letters, and beneath it, in fine print, ibuprofen. That word, ibuprofen, that is your guiding star. This is the name of the active ingredient. Make it a strict rule. Whenever a doctor writes you a prescription or you buy something at the pharmacy, always look for the IN. Take a picture of it. Jot it down in your phone notes. This knowledge transforms you from a passive buyer into a truly informed consumer. You will no longer be dependent on whatever brand the pharmacist happens to think of first, or which medication is most profitable for them to sell. You will know exactly what you need and be able to shop for that specific substance under various trade names and at different price points. This simple action, checking the small print beneath the brand name, will save you a small fortune down the road. Once you know the name of the active ingredient, step 2 is where modern technology comes in. You no longer have to visit 10 different pharmacies just to compare prices. There are plenty of aggregator websites and mobile apps that will do all the heavy lifting for you. How does it work? Instead of typing in a brand name, you simply enter the drug's IN, the International Non-Proprietary Name, which is the official name of the active substance. For example, loratadine. The service will then give you a list of every medication registered in your country that contains that specific ingredient. You'll see a dozen different names from various manufacturers, and most importantly, you can sort them by price. You'll instantly see that the exact same loratadine can cost dramatically different amounts, sometimes 10 times the price depending on the brand. These services often show medication availability in local pharmacies and allow you to reserve the product at the most competitive price. Take 5 minutes to explore these sites. Find the one that works best for you, and make it a habit to use it before every trip to the pharmacy. Think of it as your personal financial advisor for medication, right there on your smartphone, always ready to help. Step 3 involves having the right conversation with your physician. Too many patients hesitate to bring up money matters with their doctor, and that's a big mistake. A good doctor cares about you getting the treatment you need, not about driving you into debt. When your doctor prescribes medication, don't hesitate to ask, "Doctor, could you please write the prescription for the generic ingredient rather than the brand name?" Legally, your doctor is usually required to comply with the request if you ask. You can also ask a direct question. "This medication seems quite costly. Are there more affordable alternatives or generics with the same active ingredient that you would recommend?" Trust me, your doctor is fully aware that generic equivalents exist. They often prescribe brand-name drugs simply out of habit or following a visit from a pharmaceutical rep. Your job is to politely but firmly emphasize that the cost of your treatment is a priority. This is an entirely normal and civilized dialogue. You are not asking for inferior care. You are simply asking for the option to choose among medications with the same proven effectiveness. That is your legal right. Okay, so now you're armed with knowledge, and you head to the pharmacy. This is step number 4, and confidence is key here. Often the pharmacist or pharmacy tech will automatically suggest the most expensive drug. This is typically because pharmacies often have sales quotas or incentives from manufacturers. If they hand you a box for $100, but you know there's a generic available for $10, don't stay silent. Politely say, "Thank you, but I'd like to see all the medications containing the active ingredient." You name the generic ingredient. Or even simpler, "Could you please give me the most affordable option containing name of substance?" If the pharmacist starts pushing back, saying, "This one is better, it's imported," or "There are no equivalents," don't give in. Calmly stand your ground. The phrase, "Please check your database for all trade names containing this specific generic ingredient," usually works without fail. Sometimes it genuinely happens that the cheaper generics are out of stock at that specific location. In that case, simply thank them and check another pharmacy, or use an online tool to locate it. The most important thing is not to let them convince you that a more expensive drug is fundamentally better in some way. If the active ingredient, the dosage, and the formulation are identical, their therapeutic effect is exactly the same. However, in the pursuit of savings, it is crucial to keep your head. There are certain red flags, situations where substituting a drug without your doctor's approval is strictly off limits. This primarily concerns serious chronic conditions where maintaining a stable concentration of the medication in your bloodstream is absolutely vital. Examples include anticonvulsant drugs for seizure disorders, blood thinners, specific hormonal treatments, or anti-rejection medications for organ transplant patients. In these critical cases, even minimal differences in the inactive ingredients could theoretically impact absorption and alter the drug's effectiveness. Therefore, if you are taking any medication long-term and want to transition to a more affordable generic version, you must discuss it with your doctor. While they might approve the change, they may also recommend follow-up blood tests after a period to ensure the drug is maintaining therapeutic levels. Always remember, your budget should never compromise your safety. For most common ailments, such as treating a cold, a headache, or simple allergies, swapping medications is generally safe. But with any critical long-term prescription, always seek that specialist consultation. And finally, a crucial technical point. The devil is in the details, and when it comes to medication, those details are the dosage and the specific formulation. When you're looking for a generic or an equivalent drug, it's not enough just to find the same active ingredient. It is absolutely critical that the dosage matches exactly. If your doctor prescribed a medication with a 500 milligram dosage, you must look for an equivalent that is precisely 500 milligrams, not 250 or 1,000. Also, pay close attention to the specific form of the medicine. Tablets, capsules, syrups, sprays, suppositories. These aren't just different formats. They fundamentally change how quickly and how the body absorbs the drug. You can't simply swap a tablet for a syrup and expect the same results. Specialized forms are particularly important, such as extended-release or sustained-release tablets. These are designed to work slowly and consistently over 12 or even 24 hours. If you replace these with a standard, immediate-release tablet, even if the dosage is identical, you will not achieve the required therapeutic effect. Therefore, your rule when searching for an equivalent is this: the same active ingredient, the same dosage, and the same formulation. Only when all three parameters match will the substitution be correct and safe. Now let's dive into the most interesting part, the concrete examples. We'll start with the undisputed classics that are in every home medicine cabinet, painkillers and fever reducers. The most popular active ingredients here are ibuprofen and paracetamol. Let's take ibuprofen. When you go to the pharmacy, you'll likely see a well-known brand in bright packaging that's constantly advertised on TV. A package of 2,200 milligram tablets might set you back, let's say, $3 or $4. The pharmacist will most likely suggest that exact product. But if you look closely at the shelf or simply ask, you can find a product labeled plainly as ibuprofen from a generic manufacturer. It's the exact same dosage, the exact same quantity of tablets, but the price is 40 cents. That's a tenfold difference. Just think about that. What are you actually paying the extra money for? A fancy box and a commercial. The situation is exactly the same with paracetamol. You have expensive effervescent powders and tablets in glossy blisters, and then you have plain, unassuming paracetamol for a fraction of the cost. The effect is absolutely identical. They will reduce your fever and relieve your pain. This simple example perfectly illustrates the core point of our entire conversation today. Our next item on the list is the hugely popular combination cold and flu remedies. These usually come as bright, individual powder packets that you dissolve in hot water. They cost a fair amount, especially if you buy enough for the entire course of treatment. Manufacturers promise that a single sachet contains everything you need to tackle those cold symptoms. But let's take a look under the hood. What's actually in these things? Typically, we see the usual suspects: paracetamol or acetaminophen as the pain reliever and fever reducer, phenylephrine to clear up nasal congestion, some kind of antihistamine to reduce swelling and irritation, and, of course, ascorbic acid, better known as vitamin C. Sometimes they even add a little caffeine for a boost of energy. Now let's do the math. A pack of the most basic, generic paracetamol is dirt cheap. The cheapest generic decongestant nasal spray is also very inexpensive. A bottle of generic vitamin C tablets is maybe a couple of dollars more. If you total that up, you get the exact same set of active ingredients for a tiny fraction of the cost, maybe 20% of the price of those attractive brand name packets. You're literally buying 3 separate, inexpensive generic medications and getting the exact same therapeutic result. This is one of the best examples of how clever marketing makes us pay significantly extra for pure convenience and fancy packaging. Let's turn our attention to allergy sufferers. Dealing with seasonal allergies or reactions to specific triggers is an extremely common issue. Naturally, allergy medications, antihistamines, represent a massive market. When you go to the pharmacy, you'll likely be offered a popular, next-generation drug. The active ingredient will probably be something like loratadine or cetirizine. A small pack of 10 tablets might cost anywhere from 300 to 700 rubles. The ads promise fast symptom relief without causing drowsiness. But what happens if we look for generics? We can easily find products simply labeled loratadine or cetirizine, made by different manufacturers, and those packages will cost you 50, 70, maybe 100 rubles tops. That is 5 to 7 times cheaper. The active ingredient is the exact same, the dosage is identical, and the effect is absolutely equivalent. They relieve itching, sneezing, and watery eyes just as effectively, and they won't make you drowsy, because that is a characteristic of the chemical compound itself, not the brand name. So, if you're an allergy sufferer, simply memorize the name of your active ingredient and never pay a premium for a heavily advertised brand name again. The yearly savings can be truly significant. Stomach issues like heartburn, gastritis, and ulcers are, unfortunately, familiar to far too many people, and one of the most frequently prescribed classes of medications for treating these conditions is proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs. The oldest and most well-known drug in this group is omeprazole. There's a very famous original brand name drug on the market based on omeprazole that is quite expensive, often costing between 500 and 600 rubles for a month's supply. But if you look for generics, you'll find dozens of medications simply called omeprazole, manufactured by countless different companies. And these generic options will cost only 30 to 100 rubles per package. The difference in price can be astronomical, up to 20-fold. Yes, that is not a typo, a 20-time difference. Considering that these medications are often prescribed for long periods, sometimes lasting several months, the resulting savings are enormous. You could either spend several thousand rubles for the entire course, or manage to pay just a couple of hundred. Crucially, the therapeutic effect will be absolutely the same. Next time you are at the pharmacy, simply ask for the most affordable omeprazole, and you will be absolutely shocked by the difference in cost. Let's look at another striking example. Antifungal medications. There's a very common issue that often only requires 1 or 2 capsules to solve. The active ingredient in these capsules is fluconazole. When you go to the pharmacy, a famous brand name box will be sitting right out front. A single 150 milligram capsule might cost you 700, 800, or even 1,000 rubles. Many people, unaware of the alternatives, just buy the brand name because the issue is sensitive and they want a quick, reliable fix. But we need to be smart shoppers. Instead, simply ask the pharmacist for the drug called fluconazole. And the pharmacist, if they are being honest with you, will hand you a package containing the exact same capsule, the exact same 150 milligram dose, but for 30 rubles, 30 versus 1,000. This is one of the most outrageous examples of pharmaceutical pricing you will ever see. You are paying nearly 1,000 rubles simply for knowing one name and not the other. Now you know both names, and I think the choice is clear. This one piece of information alone can save you a significant amount of money on a single trip to the drugstore. Dealing with a cold or a stuffy nose is never fun, and instinctively we reach for that instant relief. The trusty nasal spray. Most of the popular decongestant sprays rely on the active ingredient xylometazoline. Walk into any pharmacy, and you'll see shelves overflowing with these products. You'll find bright packaging, promising 12 hours of clear breathing, and sleek, convenient applicators. And the prices? They often range quite high for a small 10-milliliter bottle. It feels like a standard price for that quick comfort. But here's the catch. If you ask the pharmacist to show you all the options containing xylometazoline, you might be surprised to find very simple, basic bottles, perhaps not even sprays but droppers, labeled plainly as xylometazoline. And these will cost only a fraction of the price of the brand name versions. Sure, The basic bottles might be slightly less convenient to use, but the active ingredient is identical, and it will clear your congestion just as effectively. Essentially, you are paying 10 times more, simply for the fancy plastic dispenser and the marketing hype. Is it worth the premium? That's entirely up to you, but at least now you know you have a choice. Let's move on to a market where markups hit astronomical heights: vitamins and dietary supplements. We are constantly told we need to take vitamins, and pharmacy shelves are overflowing with attractive bottles making bold promises. Energy and vitality, stronger immunity, or healthy hair and nails. These complexes often come with hefty price tags. But let's look closer. Vitamin C is ascorbic acid. It is a simple chemical compound, and it is exactly the same, whether it's in a fancy jar costing a significant amount of money, or in a package of basic ascorbic acid costing pennies. The same principle applies to vitamin D, B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, and so on. These are all standard chemical compounds. There is no such thing as elite or premium vitamin D. The active ingredient is identical, no matter the label. Granted, expensive complexes sometimes offer more advanced forms, such as chelated minerals, which might slightly improve absorption. But in the vast majority of cases, you are simply paying for slick packaging, an imported brand name, and aggressive marketing. Stick to buying simple, single-ingredient vitamins from a regular drugstore based on their chemical names, and you will save a fortune while getting the exact same result. Let's not forget about topical treatments, the ointments, creams, and gels. The same principle applies here. Say, for instance, you need a cream for dermatitis. A doctor might prescribe a steroid cream based on, let's say, hydrocortisone. At the pharmacy, they might try to sell you an imported, expensive, branded product. But there's also a domestic hydrocortisone ointment that costs significantly less. The concentration of the active ingredient is the same, and the therapeutic effect is identical. The only difference may be in the cream's base. One might be greasier, the other absorbs faster, but the medicinal component is chemically identical. It's the same story with antibacterial ointments. There are expensive, highly publicized brands, but then there are the reliable classics like tetracycline or levomethol, which cost next to nothing and do the job perfectly. Before you purchase that costly tube, always read the active ingredient list and ask your pharmacist about more affordable generic options. In most cases, these alternatives exist and are equally effective, saving you from overpaying just for a smoother texture or a pleasant scent. Let's address a critical and very serious topic: cardiovascular medications. These are the drugs that many people rely on for life, whether it's for managing blood pressure, lowering cholesterol, or preventing blood clots. This is where saving money becomes especially significant, because these aren't one-time expenses. The costs recur every single month, year after year. Take statins, for instance, the drugs used to lower cholesterol. The original brand name medication might cost hundreds of dollars a month, while its generic versions are several times cheaper. Over the course of a year, that difference can easily add up to thousands. The same principle applies to hypertension drugs. There are many active ingredients available, and for each one, you can find both expensive, original formulations and much more affordable generics. However, this is precisely where I need to stress one point again. Any change in therapy, especially when dealing with chronic conditions, must be explicitly approved by your doctor. Tell your physician about your desire to switch to a more cost-effective alternative. Chances are they won't object, but this conversation must happen. Smart savings on these types of medications aren't just financially beneficial. They allow you to ensure the continuity of your treatment, which is absolutely vital for your long-term health. To wrap up our list of examples, let's talk about antibiotics. This is one class of medication where self-treatment is strictly forbidden. Antibiotics must be prescribed by a doctor, typically after a physical examination and sometimes after lab tests. Never purchase antibiotics based on a friend's recommendation or because they worked last time. This practice is highly dangerous and contributes directly to the growing problem of antibiotic resistance. However, once your doctor has written you a prescription, say for amoxicillin with clavulanic acid, that's where our budgeting rule kicks in again. There is often a very famous and expensive original brand name drug containing that exact combination, but there are also dozens of equally effective generic equivalents that cost 2 or 3 times less. Your job isn't to choose the antibiotic itself. That's the doctor's role. Your job, after receiving the prescription, is simply to select the most affordable brand containing the active ingredient the doctor specified. Just show the prescription to your pharmacist and say, "I need this specific antibiotic, but please give me the most budget-friendly option." That way, you follow your doctor's orders exactly, without causing unnecessary strain on your wallet. Treat yourself wisely and affordably. So let's wrap things up. What's the main takeaway from everything we've discussed? It's very simple. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Stay informed and always verify the facts. The foundation of any medicine is its active ingredient, not the flashy packaging or the catchy brand name you heard in an advertisement. Remember these 3 simple steps for smart savings. First, always find out the active ingredient in your prescription. Second, use online services to compare prices across all available generic alternatives. And third, don't hesitate to discuss the cost of treatment with your doctor and confidently ask your pharmacist for what you need, not just what they profit most from selling. While your health is absolutely priceless, that certainly doesn't mean pharmaceutical corporations should be allowed to profit unfairly from it. Being smart about saving money isn't greed. It's a responsible, informed approach to managing your budget, which allows you to spend those savings on something more useful or enjoyable than overpriced pills. Thank you for watching this video all the way through. If you learned something new and useful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future exposés and helpful tips. And finally, here's my main question for you. What was the cheapest and most effective generic alternative you managed to find? Share your story in the comments below. Let's trade experiences and help each other become smarter consumers.